Hi everyone, and welcome to this chapter of the free full stack course. In this chapter, we're going to install Flutter on macOS. As with all the other chapters, this chapter is also a part of the free full stack course playlist, whose link I've provided at the bottom of the screen. The first link in the descriptions of this video you can see is the playlist for the entire course. So I hope that you're following along with the course chronologically, at least for the operating system that's applicable for you. But if you're also here, if you landed in this video just for installing Flutter on macOS, you're also more than welcome to stay on this video. So what we're going to do is to follow some instructions, as you can see at the bottom of the screen. They're in docs flutter dev /get started /install macOS. And I've already opened that page in here. So let me see if I can do some screen reshuffling so you see it better as well. And the steps required to install Flutter for macOS are already provided in here. And remember, this is a URL on Flutter dev. And this URL could change in the future. So what I suggest for you to do, if you can't find this URL, and if you're trying to open the URL that I provided at the bottom of the screen and just can't open it, the best thing you can do is just to Google Flutter install macOS, and then you should be able to find the actual URL that's applicable at the time when you're watching this video. But for the time being, this URL is valid, so you can just visit it as I've provided at the bottom of the screen. Before you can install Flutter, you can see that there's a little warning here on the website telling you that you need to enable Rosetta on your Apple Silicon Mac. So I have an Apple Silicon Mac, so I have an M1 MacBook Pro in here. So for me to be able to install Flutter, I first need to basically enable Rosetta. And if you have an Intel-based Macintosh, so you have you bought a Macintosh for instance, 2-3 years ago, then you probably have actually an Intel-based Macintosh. And in that case, you don't have to worry about Rosetta in that case, okay? So what we're going to do in here, since I know I have an M1 Mac, I need to first go ahead and copy this command from here. Then I'm going to paste it inside terminal. Okay, so I'm just going to bring up terminal, paste this command in here. I see that actually there's a $sign applied in the beginning, so I'm just going to remove that. Going to provide my password in here. So I can see that it's doing some installation, and it's at the end, it says install of Rosetta 2 finished successfully, as you can see right here. So we don't have a problem with that. So Rosetta has been installed, and then we can actually follow along with the rest of the steps in the installation guide. So let's go ahead then and download the relevant zip file for my computer. So here, there are two zip files, one for Intel-based Macintoshes and the other one for Apple Silicon. If you have an Intel one, just please press this button to download the relevant zip file. And for me, I have an Apple Silicon, so I'm just going to press this button in here. Then the zip file is going to be downloaded, so you can see in here. There we go. So that's the zip file. It could take some time. I can see it's 1.24 gigabytes. So it is quite a large file, depending on your network connection. This could take some time. Thankfully, it's going quite fast in here, so we don't have to worry about pausing the video or anything. So I can see now it's also decompressing the zip file. So that in itself could actually take some time. So I'm just going to let it do its thing, and then we'll continue the video after that. I didn't really have to wait so long because I can see it decompress the file without a problem. So I'm just going to open this file. So let's see if I can bring it on another screen. So let's see if I bring Flutter here. So as you can see, here's the contents of that folder. There's lots of files and folders in this Flutter folder. So what I usually do in these cases is that I take the contents of this Flutter folder inside a folder where I know where it actually sits. So I use Rust, for instance, I use Python, I use Flutter, lots of other, I use Node, for instance, and I kind of like to keep these things in a folder where I can have control over that folder. So I usually have a folder in my home folder called dev, and inside there, then I usually call this tooling, as you can see at the bottom of the screen. So Flutter being a tool, I basically place it inside this folder tooling. So what I'm going to do then is to go ahead and go to that folder. So let's just maximize terminal in here. And if you don't have that folder, what you need to do is to go to your home folder. So if we say we go into this folder, okay, so this is my home folder, it's under my user. And so if you do the same command in here, go to that folder and then create a new directory called dev. If you want to follow along just like I'm doing, basically, if you want to do like I'm doing, otherwise you're more than welcome to extract that folder and the files for the Flutter for the Flutter folder, put them in some folder that you're comfortable with. It doesn't necessarily have to be here that I'm showing you, but it also is good if it's in the same folder, so that if in the future, in any future videos, I want to refer to the Flutter installation folder, I'm just going to say, okay, go to this folder and do this and this. And then if you've installed Flutter in another folder, then you just to remember where that folder was. So depends. I suggest and recommend actually that you extract Flutter folder where I'm telling you to hopefully extract it. So in your home folder, create another folder called dev. And then if you go into dev, then create yet another folder called tooling. Okay. And then we're going to go into tooling. I don't have to create it again since I already have it. And what we're going to do is we're going to move that download Flutter folder here. And then we're going to move that in here in the current folder. So if I then say Flutter, I can see that Flutter is available in here. So you can see in here, we have my home folder, dev folder, tooling, and then a Flutter folder. And as you can see, my terminal has detected that this is actually a Git repository. And so Flutter's folder, the one that we downloaded, it actually has a Git repository backing it. So if you say git remote v, you can see that it is coming from Flutter organization and then the Flutter repository on GitHub. So that also has its own advantages. It means that you can basically pull from master or pull from stable, for instance, to get a new version of Flutter. So that's really good. Inside this folder, there's another folder called bin, and in there, let's actually see bin cache. So in here, you can see that there's Dart and Flutter executables. So these two folders need to, these two executables need to be in path. So if we go back from here to the home folder, for instance, and if I type in here Flutter, it's searching the whole system and actually found Flutter somehow. So if I say which Flutter, let's see, it actually found it somehow. It must have been that I've entered this path somewhere before. But what we need to do is just to imagine that you don't have access to Flutter because you just install it. What you need to do is just to add it to your path. So if we go to our zshrc in here, remember, the zshrc is my source file in here for my terminal, because I'm using Oh My ZSH, and this is something that I mentioned, and we've actually gone through this in one of the earlier chapters in the free full stack course. You may not be using Oh My ZSH, and in that case, you need to go ahead and update bashrc file. But since I'm using Oh My ZSH, I'm going to go to zshrc file. Okay. And in here, we'll see that I already have an export path. You see in here that says export path, home folder, dev, tooling, Flutter, bin path. And I've commented this out, so we just need to remove the comment to put it back in. But if you don't have that, you just need to write this particular export into your zshrc or bashrc file as well in order to add Flutter to your path. Okay, so that's available there, and I kind of wonder if I already have something similar, perhaps somewhere else in this zshrc file, because Flutter was in the path, but it could also be that since it was in the path, I hadn't sourced my zshrc files, so it still thought that is in the path. Okay, so I'm just going to press and save this file. So after saving this file, writing Flutter in here should give you all the available commands under for executable. Okay, and also you should be able to type Dart, because that's also one of the executables that was inside the bin folder. Okay. So after doing that, actually, after adding Flutter to your path, you will have to restart your shell. And the way to do that is just to type source and zshrc, in this case, if you have Oh My ZSH, okay? Or you have to source your bashrc if you're just using bash, okay? And since you've done that and you've sourced your zshrc file or bashrc file, Flutter should be in path, so you don't have to worry about whether Flutter is available or not. But if you want to double check that, just type flutter dash dash version, and this should give you the current version of Flutter. And as long as you see this prompt in here, you should be sure that Flutter is installed and available in your current path, okay? And one of the things I recommend after the installation of Flutter is to run flutter doctor, which is a command in the Flutter executable, which looks at your environment and just ensures that you have all the required software, for instance, like Visual Studio Code and stuff like that. Actually, I think it might not be one of the required software. I think like the Android SDK and iOS SDK and etc. are actually more important than Visual Studio Code. So let's have a look at what this command actually does. If you write flutter doctor in here, you'll see that it will basically go through some of the internal checks that Flutter has, just to ensure that your installation is basically sufficient for developing Flutter applications on macOS. So actually, I can see in here, it says Flutter is installed. The Android toolchain is installed because if you remember from one of the previous videos, we installed Android Studio. And also with that, we install Android SDK. We also have Xcode installed, Chrome is installed, and then we have Android Studio and VS Code as well, Visual Studio Code. Yep. So as long as you see all these checks in here, then you're good to go. But if you're seeing any errors in here, like for instance, it tells you Chrome is not installed, then please go ahead and download Chrome. And Chrome is not a necessary tool for Flutter installation. But if you're doing web applications with Flutter, which is not something that we're going to do in this course, you will need Chrome most definitely. So that's why Chrome is one of the items that is in the list. And also, it could also be that sometimes you will get some warnings telling you that some of the Android SDK licenses have not been accepted. And if that's the case, Flutter also gives you hints as how to accept those licenses. So it's not just that Flutter Doctor finds problems, but it will also tell you things that you need to do to fix those problems, okay? So after all of this, once you get all these checks to go green, then you're pretty much good to go on macOS. So that was really it for this chapter, and I hope to see you in the next one.